When I was a young, single woman living in my hometown of London, England, I was admitted to Memorial Hospital with severe complications following a failed attempted abortion which I had done in my apartment bathroom. Being raised Catholic, I sought to handle the unwanted pregnancy secretly and alone. After losing a great deal of blood and feeling very cold, I called for an ambulance to take me to the hospital. As soon as I was rushed into the emergency room, I recalled all the staff running into my room bringing carts with equipment, bottles, pumps, needles, bandages, tubes, etc. From the navel down, I was drenched with blood and very weak. I was in a life-threatening, very critical condition. As the blood drained from my body, so did my will to live. I heard a pop sound and suddenly the pain stopped. I felt calm for the first time in 3 months since learning of my pregnancy by a man who had lied to me telling me he loved me and wanted to marry me, but who had a wife and 5 children in another city. I had a very clear view of my body as they ferociously worked on me, hooking up a transfusion and other tubes. I recalled thinking that I just wished they would stop. I looked horrible and my color was very bad. I was embarrassed to be the cause of all the panic. I had sinned and didn't deserve to live. The fact that I was having these thoughts from within inches of the ceiling didn't bother me or confuse me as much as sensing the stress I was causing among those below me. I also know I was totally conscious even though I had heard a nurse, the only one in a blue smock, tell the doctors I had lost consciousness soon after entering the emergency room. I was very aware of every detail of the events and the room. I was aware of a tunnel that appeared suddenly, and I was being pulled into it. I was happy to be away from that tense scene below. I floated toward the tunnel and passed right through a ceiling fan and then the ceiling. The blackness of the tunnel was churning and I began to gather speed. I was curious about my present body or form and looked at my arms and hands. They seemed to be expanding and emitting a slight glow. I felt a rush of air and a low droning noise like a vibration as I gained speed heading for a bright light far in the distance. As I proceeded at a faster rate, I felt there was a presence with me that kept me calm and emitted both love and wisdom. I didn't see anyone, but I felt the essence of my grandpa who had died when I was 13. I was aware of his comforting presence, but saw or heard nothing. I finally came to the end and floated into a place that was overwhelmed by a radiant white light that seemed to embody all the concepts of love, a love that was unconditional and like a mother has for a child. It was definitely a warm, joyful presence, the same one that drew me into the tunnel in the first place. It seemed like a giant force field or energy that radiated all the good and noble emotions known to man. I had given up the ways of the Catholic Church as soon as I left parochial school at 17, feeling that I had been released from an unyielding prison and was far from religious, but I knew in my heart that this was God. Words can't describe my awe in this presence. It seemed like I became part of the light and then the light became part of me. We were one. I suddenly understood, without question, how interconnected we all are with each other, God and all life forms in the universe. At that time I recall wondering if I would be punished for murdering my child and in doing so, kill myself as well. I could tell he knew my every thought and feeling. The next thing I knew I was seeing a sleeping baby I knew to be me. I watched with fascination as I saw the highlights of each stage of my life. It was like seeing a circular movie screen and many different scenes flashing by at tremendous speeds. Somehow, I was able to see and grasp not only what was happening, but the feelings I was experiencing at the time as well as the emotions I caused in others. I watched and felt my mother's shame as she bore me out of wedlock right up to the elation of love and the crushing pain of rejection and betrayal. I understood the fear and insecurities of the man that caused my pain and his own guilt upon breaking up with me upon learning of my pregnancy. I felt every good or bad deed I had ever done and its consequences upon others. It was a difficult time for me, but I was supported by unconditional love and weathered the painful parts. I was asked telepathically about whether I wanted to stay or return to my former life in the Earth School. I fell to my knees in order to show my desire to stay with him. He showed me a beautiful shiny bubble which floated next to me. In it I saw a tiny baby nursing at a breast. The baby became a toddler and began walking toward me still inside the bubble. Then the image of a young boy turned into a teenager and he continued to age until he was a full-grown man. Who is that? I asked. Your son Michael, was the reply. I recall feeling very relieved that I hadn't destroyed his chance at life. A flood of fearful thoughts crowded into my mind. I wasn't even married and could barely support myself. How could I raise a son? Could he ever forget or forgive me for trying to abort him at 4 months into life? How could I ever do this alone without help? I saw a flash of myself with a man I knew to be my future husband, and he was holding the 2-year-old boy I saw in the picture. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel love for the baby I was carrying. All the embarrassment, complications, and hardships I had used to rationalize my abortion seemed very weak and selfish. Suddenly, I was popped back into my body and searing pain tore through my lower body. The same nurse in the blue smock was giving me a shot and telling me to relax, that the pain medication would soon begin to take effect. It seemed as if I had not been unconscious for more than a few minutes, yet my visit to the other side seemed to last hours. While out of my body in the emergency room, I noticed a red label on the side of the blade of a ceiling fan facing the top of the ceiling. When I was taken to the recovery room, I was told that my baby was saved. I said, "Yes, I know." I asked if someone would please listen to my incredible experience and was told that they had no time. My doctor said it was a miracle that he was able to save the baby along with myself. He said he thought he'd lost us on 2 occasions. I tried to tell him about my experience, but he was called away. His parting smile left no doubt that he felt he was wasting his time listening to the drug-induced ramblings of a crazy woman. My mother arrived later, with religious reinforcements trying to get a confession of sins. I was mildly amused when a nun appeared and began to pray for me, asking God to forgive me. I knew I was already forgiven. My punishment came from my own emotions of guilt and shame that I experienced so painfully during the Bubble movie review of my former life. Only one nurse in the hospital listened to me. She did so after I told her a few details of what she had said to the doctors and nurses while I was unconscious. She told of hearing of others who had been brought back from the brink of death with similar tales. I finally convinced her to get a tall ladder and see for herself the red sticker whose appearance I described in great detail on the hidden side of the emergency room ceiling fan. The nurse and an orderly saw the sticker, confirming all the details of its appearance I described. I knew what I knew, but I felt better that at least 2 people believed me. I never mentioned this experience again until now. I went ahead with my life optimistically, with a whole new attitude, and delivered a healthy baby boy 5 months later, and I named him Michael. The damages I had done to myself prevented further pregnancies, but the psychic and love bond one experienced with Michael is truly a cherished gift from beyond. The experience remains as real and vivid now as it did 34 years ago, and changed my life in many spiritually uplifting ways. NDERF addendum: Mary returned to the Catholic Church, but was careful to attend a church that was more open-minded than her previous church. NDERF expresses appreciation to Mary for her courage to share